This is a video response to Levi Perry's video where he details a negligent discharge that he did in his apartment building. And it was a 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum. The bullet left his apartment, went into the neighboring apartment, and it was a real serious thing that resulted in him losing his firearms, right to possess firearms for 4 months of probation, cost him $5,000 altogether in legal expenses, and he lost the firearm. But he learned a valuable lesson. It wasn't to not shoot your gun inside your apartment. It was to not be complacent. That was the lesson that he learned. And he chronicled this on his video for the benefit of all these YouTube experts that think that it can't happen to them. Because Levi Perry is a very very accomplished shooter, not in terms of championships or anything, but in terms of he can shoot at a higher level than many shooters have been shooting for many years. So he's not like a newbie, you know. He's a guy that knows how to shoot, and it happened to him. So anyway, he chronicled this in his video, and some of the commenters are actually ridiculing him along the lines of how could you do that? How could you be so stupid? I would never do that. I've been trained in safety, firearm safety. I know how to be safe. Only a fool, an idiot would do that. That's the response of some of these people. And so I'm going to tell you a little story, a contrast between two types of shooters. And you take Levi Perry, who has learned a painful lesson in this and is willing to share it with the YouTube community, which takes a lot of humility. You contrast that to this other guy that I used to shoot with years ago. And he was about my age, a little bit older than me, but an older guy. He was trained in the military how to handle firearms safely. He had never had a negligent discharge. He'd never had a safety disqualification from a shooting match. He'd shot matches for years. He was always safe. He was one of these guys that were unquestionably always safe. He had a certification in USPSA range officer, scorekeeper, and safety officer. So he was certified as safe. He was trained as safe. He'd never had a negligent discharge. He'd never had a safety DQ. You contrast that with me. I've had 2 negligent discharges in my life that I committed on my own range by myself out of, I don't know, a couple 100,000 rounds fired. And it was during training. I was shooting a Shadow 2, which is a double single action. And to make ready for the USPSA start position, you have to have a round chambered and the hammer down. And there's no decocking ability on the Shadow 2. So you have to lower the hammer on a live round, much like a single action army that has a large hammer. It's easy to do that. On the Shadow 2, it's a very small hammer, like a 1911 type hammer. And so it can slip off your thumb. And that happened to me twice. And I shouldn't say happened to me. I fumbled that twice. Both times the shot went harmlessly into my berm because I was observing all the other safety rules. The gun was pointed in a safe direction. But it really rattled me, and so I sold the gun because I realized that this gun does not work for me. With enough loadings, make ready procedures over and over again, I could do this again. And the first time it scared the hell out of me. I thought, I'm never going to do that again. A few months later, I did it again, and that's it. I'm selling the gun. Okay, so negligent discharge has happened to me on 2 occasions. I've had safety disqualifications twice out of something like 120 matches over 10 years. So I've had safety disqualifications. I'm fallible. I know that it can happen to me, and safety is a big priority for me. But this other guy I used to shoot with, he'd never had a safety disqualification, a negligent discharge or anything. He was always safe. Well, one day we were shooting a match, and this guy was there and I was there, and he was in the next bay, so I didn't see this, but I talked to 3 different people that were there, and they all told essentially the same story. That this guy, the same guy I'm talking about, that had never had a safety disqualification, as he was moving through the course of fire, he was running up to the next bank of targets, he tripped and fell very hard on the ground. Now, tripping and falling is not a safety disqualification, but if you if you break the 180, and what that means in a shooting competition environment, the 180 is basically if your gun crosses the plane of 180 degrees this way, this is where you can point it, but this is 180 degrees. If you come back here one little bit, if you come back here, you've broken the 180, and it's a safety disqualification. That means that you're done shooting for the day. You don't get to shoot the rest of the courses. You take a no score. You have to put your gun away, not handle guns for the rest of that day. You know, the next match, it's all forgotten. You get to shoot again. But for that day, you get a safety disqualification. It's humiliating. I've experienced it. And guys that aren't big babies will accept it. They won't argue about it. They'll put their gun away. They'll stay. They won't go home mad. They'll stay. They'll help out with the match. They could pick up brass. They could tape targets, help other shooters, just be there, help to clean up, you know. So that's what I did both times. And so anyway, this guy, he falls down. When he gets up, the acting range officer there, and the scorekeeper, observed this, and the one guy told him, he says, listen, you broke the 180. In other words, we're going to have to DQ you. And this guy said, no, you're not. Listen, I am a certified range safety officer. You're not. You're just range officer for the day. You've never been trained like me. I know what I did. I know what's safe, what's not safe. I know what the rules are. I'm not DQ'd. I didn't break the 180. Give me that scorekeeping tablet. We're going to call the next shooter. So that guy was not DQ'd that day because those range safety officers didn't have the balls to make it stick. So even after all that happened, he still had never taken a safety disqualification in a match. In his mind, he was still always safe. And then some years went by, and he had another screw up later on. This time, the range officers had the balls to stand up to him, and they weren't going to put up with it. And he had to take the DQ. They wouldn't let him out of it the second time. Well, he went away mad, and the last I heard, he's never been back to a match. So that's the contrast between the guy that is always safe, certified, and ridicules other people for their safety errors, even if they admit them, compared to Levi Perry, that not only admits something he didn't have to tell anybody on YouTube, but shares the experience. And out of those two guys, let me tell you something, Levi Perry is welcome to come shoot on my range anytime he wants. I trust that guy 100% because he's learned the hard lesson. Old farts like this other guy that think they've got it all figured out and they've graduated from the school of safety and they're always safe, these guys are the dangerous ones. If you're ever around somebody that in a safety discussion comes up and I've heard guys say this, oh, I'm always safe. I've been trained in firearm safety since I was a kid. I am always safe. Those guys are complacent. And more than likely, they commit multiple safety violations every time they pick up a gun. They're just not aware of it. And if you watch them, they'll have their finger in the trigger guard. They'll sweep people. They'll sweep their own body. You know, these guys will shoot you and say, oh, sorry, my gun went off. That's who you're talking to. That's who we're talking about there. So complacency is the enemy. We're only as safe as the last thing we did or the current thing we're doing with our gun. You can't get complacent. Every time I go on my range, I think to myself, if I do the wrong thing, I could shoot myself today. Or if I'm with somebody else, I could have an accident and shoot somebody else today if I do the wrong thing. Even if I follow the safety rules, I could accidentally put a shot over my berm and that bullet could go to parts unknown. And even though it's very unlikely, it could hit a person or livestock, it could damage something. You know, so every time I go out there, I have a little talk with myself because I have not graduated from the school of safety. I am not always safe. I make mistakes. I know I'm capable of making mistakes like everyone else. So that's my video response to Levi. I'm very impressed that he shared that with everybody. Took a lot of humility. It's kind of a one-of-a-kind video. I mean, I guess there are some others on YouTube, but I mean, that was no excuses. Took full responsibility for that. And he doesn't deserve the ridicule from old fart gun fuds that think that it couldn't happen to them, because believe me, it can. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.